Well, thank you everybody for taking time to join us this afternoon. I know that you have many places you can be, and we're thankful that you're joining us and taking some time to be in conversation with us today. My name is Becky Negus, she, her pronouns, and I am the founder and chief care connector for Women in Sustainability. Women in Sustainability is an inclusive social and environmental nonprofit that is dedicated to caring for the people who care for the planet through our 4 pillars of community, advocacy, resources, and education to create a sustainable and equitable future through the feminist viewpoint and leadership. Women in Sustainability strives to create a safe space for like-minded and diverse individuals to create purposeful connections and conversations such as we're having today. All are welcome in our community. So we're going to go ahead and get started, do quick introductions. I'm so thrilled to be welcoming Maren and Nikki into today's conversation. So I actually had the opportunity to take one of their previous classes, and I just learned so much from these two, and it is something that I've been able to carry with me and utilize in my daily life as I continue on my diversity, equity inclusion journey. So I'm so thankful for the gifts and tools they have provided to me. And now we get to welcome them to provide those tips and tools for you as well. So first, Maren Miller is on a mission to empower transformational and inclusive leaders. She brings with her 15 years of experience and is committed to intersectional anti-oppression, culture building, belonging, and transformational organizational culture change. She values awareness, collaboration, reflection, and service. And she believes this work deserves intentionality, responsiveness, creativity, and a slow to go fast approach. Maren has built a career of implementing systematic change, leadership transformation, and models that have allowed diverse teams to thrive. She works empathetically and collaboratively with a wide range of stakeholders in conflict transformation and leadership development with an outcomes-based approach. Next, we have our next speaker, Nikki Murillo. Nikki has been called Colorado home for 14 years. She is a proud first-generation Latin woman with a passion for serving her community and honoring the complexity and beauty of every human. Nikki has been a facilitator, coach, educator, and leader in various nonprofit and school settings. She has extensive experience in curriculum designing and leading organization-wide efforts that address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion that span areas of staff development, policies, and service provision. She has curated and facilitated staff training, provided individual coaching and consultation, and supported organizational change around DEI. Nikki has also holds experience in nonprofit administration, development and grants, human resources, and nonprofit dissolution. So please help me give a warm Women in Sustainability welcome to today's speakers, Nikki and Maren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First time having my bio read like that. Okay.
I did all that? Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much, Becky. And thanks to you all for being here with us today. We are excited to see some new faces and some familiar faces. Yeah, this is wonderful. Wonderful to be in community with y'all. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot to chat about today. And some of it might be stuff that y'all already know, some of it might be some new things to consider, but either way, you know, we're just super obviously passionate about this work, and so we're excited to be with people who want to be in this with us. But yeah, so I'll just kind of start, and actually we've got some slides. Are those I can share mine.
Yep, 1 minute. And yep, do you want me to pull them up, or you can share yours either way?
I'll go ahead and share, since we'll have to like move through slides and everything. If that's okay.
You're all set.
Okay. This is always the hard part. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Excellent.
Good.
Okay. Super. So we're going to be talking about embodying inclusion today. We've been on a mission to connect with folks who are really interested in talking about the sustainability of this work. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the workshop, but this kind of work, DEI work, has been around for a really long time, but it kind of got this like big attention grab in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and there's so much that has come out of that, and now there's just a lot that is still like needing to happen, and there's feeling like a kind of like a push to like what is next. And so we're really interested in having that conversation around sustainability and how to position people to have that radical impact that we're trying to have in our communities. We have several different frameworks and practices that we really lean on. So we're going to share some of those with y'all today. But we're just, and it didn't finish that sentence, but looking ahead to like what do we do to continue this work forward, and in our respective roles and our respective spaces. So we're gonna jump in. I'll share our group norms, which Becky pretty much shared the gist of what we have as well. I'll just name ours, are slightly just worded slightly differently, but they're make space, take space, speak from your own perspective, or use I statements. And that simply just means trying to take ownership of your own story and your own perspective. One mic, lean in, confidentiality. We like to say what is said here stays here, but what is learned can leave. And then take care of your needs. Always take care of what you need to take care of in whatever space you're in. Get up, stand up, move around, pet and family friendly space, whatever it looks like for you. But and Becky introduced us so lovely. But Maren and I have been working together now for, gosh, I want to say like maybe 4 years. I don't know, what is time? But we have recently embarked on this new consulting endeavor together, and we're really passionate about delivering this content in a lot of different ways. And so this is an exciting format for us. And we work primarily with adults. We work around organizational culture change and leadership development. And we really try to focus on long-term DEI strategy through an anti-racist lens. And we very, very much believe that this work is personal before it is professional. This work definitely requires us to be willing to look inward and be vulnerable with ourselves in order to be better for others. And so sustainability is definitely something we value, along with awareness and connection. All right, I think I will hand it to Maren for our grounding.
Do you want to stop sharing? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the group norms is something that we like to just bring into the space and give permission that could be something to implement for your own spaces, that you can choose how to approach it. But there is just something about setting the space and figuring out ways to name how we're going to be together. We won't go into depth with that today with an hour-long space with you today, but just wanting to name that is already one of the pieces that we always love to highlight. Another one, when we say about embodying inclusion and how this is personal before it's professional, that this is all it's not just understanding information and knowledges and systems of oppression. It's also about navigating and balancing our bodies and ourselves and our mental health, and how do we take care of ourselves. And goes back to that sustainable word of how do we sustain and stay engaged in this work. And that can look so many different ways. And I know I've had to give myself permission to that can change, that my role and my context and my energy might look different. And so how do I play around with that, and how do I have grace with myself of there might be days that I'm a little more able to be in action, and there might be days where I need to rest in order to come back to it. And so what are the practices and what are the ways that we can stay sustained? And one of those is an easy one of just how do we take moments to stay grounded, how we take moments to really just be in our bodies and notice, do I need some water? Do I need to stretch? Do I need to go outside for a moment? And giving ourselves that, because oftentimes we can get in the thing, in the day, in the world, that there's emails to write and there's calendars to get up through. And I know that's so much easier said than done, but how can we find those moments of even carving out an extra 5 minutes between calls that could maybe help with an extra breath or an extra moment. So if you feel comfortable, if you would want to join us in this, find a way that you are able to maybe be in your seat, maybe feet on the floor. If you want to close your eyes, you're welcome, or find something to gaze at, but just wanting to give you a moment here that you are here. You've taken this moment to be in this space with us. And yes, we're going to get to some conversation, but what is it for you to just take a breath and follow that breath pattern, that predictable expansion and contraction. And just noticing if you can let yourself breathe a little more deeply in the next round. Or if that feels uncomfortable, just noticing what the pattern is, trying not to have any judgment, but really just being in awareness of what's happening for you right now. I feel a little jittery in my chest. I feel a little hungry in my belly. If there's a rotation that maybe your body is asking for, or a stretch, go ahead and give it to yourself. Do a little body scan, be in awareness of what's something that you might need right now or could give yourself right now. Nice. Continued permission to keep checking in, to keep scanning from your head to your toes. Moving. Sometimes it feels nice to even do a full, very gently look behind you and give your spine a little twist. Just note there's no tigers in the room. You're okay where you are. Keep with that breath in and out. And this time I want you to breathe in through your left eye and out your right pinky finger. And breathe in through your nose and out through your heart. And breathe in through the bottom of your left foot and out of the bottom of your right foot. And again, one last bit. Is there anything else you might need? A movement, a stretch, a rotation, a big gulp of water. And then if your eyes are closed, you're welcome to open them. And just be in awareness now. What's happening for you? What was that like? And where can you maybe find more moments for yourself of those, a pause? All right, so we are going to do a quick check-in. We're going to utilize the chat quite a bit today. And so our first check-in and opportunity here is very much choose your own adventure. kind of get different layers. So whatever you are comfortable with today. If you want to do more of an intro and add your name, we'll do name, pronouns if you'd like, or feel comfortable. And then you could share with us, what did you have for breakfast? Just in general, how are you coming in? Maybe an emotion word, or if there's anything you just want us to know accessibility wise, like it's been a funky day and the dog's about to bark at the postman or whatever, just whatever you want to name. Or dive into, what have you noticed? What's been happening in the last few years regarding equity, inclusion, sustainability? Yeah, choose your level, choose your own adventure. Thanks, Brian. Brian's ramping up some lunch. Folks are typing, thinking. Thanks, Katie. Katie's feeling groovy today. I feel that. Excellent. It's okay if you're not feeling groovy too, but I feel that through there. How about others? Thanks, Christina. Feeling disconnected. Thanks for naming that. Sorry. Had a bagel for breakfast. Feeling calm. Thanks, Mika. Coming up a little distracted today. New to sustainability, but in corporate work life, feel like people are talking more about it, but sometimes action isn't quite there. Thanks for that. Hi, Joshua. Some eggs and clementines. I'm feeling lost. Thanks for sharing. Again, not required to answer all the questions. You are welcome to pick one. I appreciate those who are moving through all. Thanks, Layla. Feeling torn, so many directions, a little stressed. Seeing DEI become so accepted, but frustrating to see dispersion of an employee frontline level. Thanks. Susanna had some goo this morning. Is that right?
Yeah, like those athletic goos.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. On a big hike. Oh, I see. If I finished reading, I would see why. Excellent. Jealous on your big hike. Wonderful. And now having some rice bowl. Feeling a little tired. Okay. Thank you. Feeling happy. On a pink peony high. That's beautiful. Photographer. Trying to balance that and your environmental engineer work. Hi, Andrea. Looking to be a better mentor to young women coming into the construction space. And also working actively in HR to expand DEI. Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. Some progress in terms of DEI and sustainability. It's happening in some areas and also completely ignored in others. And there's still a lot of ground level to work to do. Yeah. Thanks, Becky. Loving the sunshine after a few rainy days. A few more minutes or a few more seconds for anyone else who would like to share what you had for breakfast or just how you're coming in. Nikki, what did you have for breakfast?
So I have totally jumped on the cottage cheese bandwagon.
You have.
Fell deep into the hole, and I now have to have it every morning in some way, shape, or form. So I had eggs with cottage cheese and avocado.
Okay. Do you like salt and pepper it, or do you put some sauce on it?
Yeah, hot sauce, salt and pepper.
Okay. Yep.
Sriracha. It's like
Nice.
the best thing. Yeah.
Nice. Excellent. I've been sticking with my 5% fat yogurt with all the nuts and all the blueberries, just trying to pack it all in. But I do love me some cottage cheese. I love that it's getting the like attention it's getting right now. It's pretty awesome. An old classic. All right. Any others, or maybe some Me Too moments of what you've seen from other folks in terms of just reactions of like, yeah, me too. Or I see some folks are already replying maybe, or doing some interactions or reactions. Go ahead and add that if you would like. Great. Now I miss Suzanne taking a day of recovery from gallbladder surgery. Yes, please take care of yourself. Things are moving. I think I missed that one. All right, y'all. Well, thanks so much for being here again. And I think we both feel even more how importantly it is just to keep coming together, just to keep sharing what's going on, what's been working, how do we keep ourselves in this. And so we'll continue to explore that. So go ahead and keep adding to the chat if you would like. If there's any other ahas or reflections, especially about that third one, just what have you seen? But we'll come back to that in a little more depth here. And again, permission to take care of your needs as we finish the last little bit together. So Nikki, if you want to go to the next slide, we can move on. So a few of the things that as consultants who still are very much passionate about anti-racist work, DEI work, this personal work of understanding ourselves in order to be better for each other and for the planet and for just the change that we believe in and the change that we can influence in the roles and the context that we are in. A lot of the work that we do with leaders is a lot of permission of how important relationship is, how much trust building is required to be sustainable in any sort of social justice work, and how knowing ourselves and our emotions and our patterns and just the ways that we see the world, the lenses that we see the world, how do we keep getting to know that? How do we keep finding ways to be reflective of that? How do we keep finding ways to be in communication of that? That is what is DEI to us. So making space for that. So even as simple as today, a check-in. Well, how is everyone coming in? What's a word or two or a phrase? What's happening for you? Or where do you feel it in your body? That can be just having a check-in before you go into your to-do list or into your meeting or your agenda can be really helpful and can be a really small, minute moment. That's what we're always looking for, as well as it's in the little things that build up over time. We also often start with groups around cultural intelligence, fostering belongings. And we know that there's research that's out there of when people feel seen, they're more likely to stay. And so when there's a lot of organizations that we're seeing who want to diversify, but are still not doing the work to actually keep the people they have, or to listen to the folks that they have, and to be in community and create belonging with the folks that already are there doing the work and wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting to be valued. We also deeply believe and continue to be on our own racial identity development, and what it does to understand the nuance of identity and the nuance of systems and how they all work together and how they work against each other sometimes and work really well together to make things harder or easier depending on folks' identities and experiences. And as I already said too, just that the relationship piece can feel so wily, and folks can feel like they're doing it. And yet it does need to be a practice. It needs to be something that is constantly come back to. And the moments that you feel like like, I don't know, I was a teacher at one point, we'd always talk about like filling up a jar with marbles, like having enough social, like not status, but just enough kind of a buffer to like work with. Because when we're in this work, when we're doing DEI or we're doing work in the environment, or whatever it is that your context or your role is right now, that things eventually are going to feel a little dicey, are going to feel hard. And so when those moments come, we need to have that buffer and that glue in order to be able to communicate and navigate through the inevitable conflict that exists. We're human beings, and we want to be able to navigate that with each other. So with that said, our title of today's webinar had some big chunks of words, and we're still trying to figure out what those mean to us. And so we want to also be in communication, or like discussion of like, what does this mean to you? So when you see embodying inclusion, what does that mean to you? What did you think we were going to talk about today? And how are you trying to do that? What does that look like? And then the other piece is authentic sustainability in action. Again, what does that mean to you? Have you seen this happen before? So yes, please go ahead and chew on that for a second. And if whatever you're willing to answer, continue to add to the chat. And maybe we can also have a couple of folks come off mute here, but give folks a couple of seconds here to think. What does embodying inclusion mean to you? And what does authentic sustainable action mean to you, look like, feel like? How have you seen it? And thanks for the folks who've added a few more comments in the chats as we were moving forward. Thanks, Joshua. Exposing yourself to different ways of living with curiosity and respect. Thanks, Suzanne. Accepting others who are different or have different ideas. Anyone willing to come off mute? We could maybe hear from one or two folks. Go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand. Go ahead, Rory.
Thanks, Maren. I was gonna talk about embodying inclusion. I think when I hear that term, it just makes me think of kind of like focusing on my own beliefs and actions and biases that I hold, and how I can kind of work with those and through those, rather than kind of depersonalizing this like fight for equity and like kind of pushing it away as, oh, it's just a systemic issue that I don't have control over. I think like embodying inclusion means like, what actions can I take? What beliefs am I holding? What privileges am I holding? And like, how does that show up in my workplace, especially?
For that. There may be one or two others who want to share it out loud. And play the mute game. And if not, I see a whole bunch of awesome answers coming through the chat. So I'll go over there. Thanks, Becky. Authentic sustainability, not greenwashing, actually doing the work to support the environment and people. Just being with myself, what's coming up for me, and being accountable for those things in the process of meeting others across difference, making space for more than one perspective, opinion to be true. Thanks, Trish. Embodying inclusion, taking the ideas and concepts from the written word and into action on a daily basis, being aware of how others might perceive the world. Thanks. Brian, embodying inclusion to me means questioning existing power dynamics, culture, and the status quo to better understand how we can include folks that have different lived experiences. Mika, embracing discomfort and learning. And then Jess, for authentic sustainability, being honest about my capacity and doing what I can, investing resources and expanding my capacity in a healthy way. Thanks. Yeah, I see lots of hearts. Again, go ahead and reactions or any other Me Too's or any other ideas of just what is embodying inclusion, authentic sustainability, authentic action look like, feel like, sound like. Go ahead, Joshua.
Just 1 second. Okay. I don't know. I think also like trying to figure out what media we consume and how that contributes to negative tropes and stereotypes. I think a lot of times people will think, oh, the show I'm watching that's like kind of a dumb show, my popcorn show, like isn't problematic because it's not taking itself seriously, but people will look at it and take it seriously because it's making money. So I think there's that too. Like we need to be critical of the media that we consume, the tropes being used, how they're putting people of color and just various communities, like the basically the positions they're placing them in and how that can be replicated. Because then if that makes enough money, people know that that's then something that people are okay with. So then we keep pushing people out kind of out of the center. I don't know if that made sense.
Absolutely. Thanks for- Oops, sorry for the back. The feedback there. Yeah, and just being mindful of it, of the narratives that exist around us. And that's the thing is I think Nikki and I, like, we're also trying to like keep people awake to the matrix, right? And so as soon as you understand different isms and systems of oppression, like it is wily, like there's a lot to continue to try and hold in terms of the nuance and like into question and our everyday lives. There's so much to be like, wait, what's that? Like, why am I doing that? Or what about that show? Absolutely. How do we stay in with a critical lens of everything that we're interacting or consuming? Thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that, Layla. And how much those isms and phobias are just manifest and shared very widely. Thanks, y'all. Pause here, see if there's any last anyone else who would want to share out loud or any last bits in the chat. Thanks, Becky. The Bud Light situation is a good case study of how a company is not embodying inclusion. Thanks for that. Or how we're seeing some big corps trying to lean into it, put their toes in it, right? But then it gets kind of hot, kind of gets a little sticky out there, and then there's pullback or there's this or that. Yep, Target is exactly what I'm thinking about, Joshua. Thanks. Exactly. And that's the reality of some of this work too, right? There's the step in and there's the step out, there's doing something, and then like, oh boy, this is the reaction. And there's also moments where like, no, this is where we stand, this is what we believe in, and we're going to lean into this feedback or this pushback. And oftentimes folks are not necessarily really willing to risk what that means. Yes. Oh, those whiteboards and execs. Yep. Thanks, Marbel. Yes, and how there's some co-option of these terms now, but how are they actually showing up embodying them or actually creating action and moving through those. Yep. Absolutely. So the commodification of all of this and how capitalism sneaks into everything turns out. Yeah, thanks, y'all. And thanks for the continued reactions and pluses and all the things that are coming through. Awesome. Yeah, well, we agree with all the things that you just said. And we would, I think, say that we'll just keep honing in on doing the work yourself first is so important and such a thing to come back to. I know I, as a white person on this journey for a few years, I have to keep reminding myself that I'm such a baby in so many ways. And as I feel like I'm getting a little more traction of understanding race and racial dynamics in my life, there's still plenty more for me to understand about gender and sexuality and what it is to be in allyship and be constantly trying to find more information and narratives and stories that are just not my lived experience in order to be better, in order to do something different, in order to be aware and seek authentic connections with others that are different from me. So that really requires a lot of folks, and what we often don't see with a lot of folks in leadership. And there's some Nikki, you'll have to remind me how this goes, but there is some sort of research too that like the more power you get, actually like the less empathetic you become. It's like a real research piece. And so, you know, that we want from our leaders and from ourselves to stay curious and listen and ask questions and seek to understand. That's not always seemingly accessible or where people are coming from. So, you know, we believe in embodying inclusion is a practice, and always, like I was mentioning before, there's always a chance for bias to creep in. There's always a chance for old conditioning to seep through. And so how do I keep trying to move through that, or be in awareness of that, and create spaces for everyone to participate meaningfully in order to move the needle. That we need as many folks to be trying to lean into this. And there's a lot of good reasons that folks don't. It's really uncomfortable out here to want to live out in an embodied way, in an inclusive way. And yet it's imperative that we do. And I think we would, in terms of authentic, sustainable actions, what that means to us is practice, practice, practice. Asking yourself what you're willing to do and risk, asking what is needed from me and from my identities in this room, in this context, moving past perfection and finding things that can feel authentic within your control and are meaningful to you. So really, you know, what we're naming some of those organizations of that line between performance and authenticity, the actual like living it out versus doing it because it looks good. All right. Well, thank you all. I think I'm going to check those chat one more time. Thanks, Trish. Authentic sustainability, perfectionism has definitely stunted our discussions because white coworkers are afraid of saying the wrong thing, how to move through this journey and how to be an ally. Thanks for that. The more power you have, the reason you have to keep the status quo. Boom. Yeah. Well, thanks y'all. We'll continue. I'll actually hand it over to Nikki here for a little bit more, but really appreciate your wisdom and your continued engagement, as we are facilitators and here to share. And also we deeply believe and love being in space with folks because you all have so much wisdom to share with each other. And we love finding ways for that to come forward. So any last any last reactions, thoughts, go ahead and put it in the chat. Otherwise, Nikki, it's yours.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely seeing a lot of like common themes throughout these comments around like performative, defensiveness, perfectionism, like status quo. There's a lot of common themes here. Like these things keep showing up, you know, so often. And to like another one that's coming to mind is like fragility, right? Like I think we all have to wrestle with our own fragility in different ways. And two, the other side of that coin, I think, is like knowing for yourself what the boundaries are to like to take care of yourself, right? Like in this work, if you are a person in a workplace who holds like systemically marginalized identities as an intersection of those, you are going to have to navigate this in a way that folks with more privileged identities are not going to have to think about, right? And so how do you also then like protect yourself, put boundaries around this, while continuing to, you know, push where you can or risk where you can or wherever that feels right and appropriate for you. So it's a constant moving target. But yeah, I appreciate the wisdom being shared as well. So I want to take just a breath after all of that. Because that is the reality of like where we are, where we have been, what we have seen. Like the last 3 years have been immensely challenging for a number of reasons that are unique, but also that we share a lot, some of those experiences in terms of COVID, in terms of being like what Joshua was saying, like in terms of like the news and media that we consume, like it's all around us. It's the water we swim in, and it's treacherous. And so there's, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are people who have been engaging in this work in a variety of different ways, right? There are folks who come to us and they say, we want to work with you for a whole year. We want to do like the whole thing. We want trainings, we want workshops, we want board engagement, we want the whole thing. And then there are folks who are like, we want one training. That's all we can afford. That's all we have buy-in for. The reasons are so many. So we're seeing that folks are really on this huge spectrum of readiness and willingness to risk, to ask challenging questions, to have difficult conversations, to reflect. Someone mentioned in the comments a lack of self-awareness. That's why emotional intelligence is one of our key like pillars, because that's a huge piece of how you even move this work from awareness to action. So we're seeing a lot of shifts in funding. We're seeing a lot of shifts in motivation, in engagement. So now what, right? Largely, a lot of organizations are asking, how do we operationalize what we've learned, right? Like we've taken the workshops on privilege and oppression and biases and microaggressions and intersectionality, but what do we do? How do we make that real? How do we move it from the paper, from the strategic plan to action? Right? Maren mentioned how do we hire diversity, right? Instead of maybe asking questions like, how do we value every single person for the perspective and lived experience that they have? Right? Folks are asking, how do we get our board to buy in and raise the funds needed for this work to sustain? Because that was one thing, is in 2020, that became a line item, right? That became a line item in people's budgets for some. But then 2021 and 2022, something took its place. That's no longer a line item. It's a part of something else. It's shared. So it's not prioritized in the same way. And this is like obviously overgeneralization, but that's just some of what we're seeing. So folks are wanting to know what's next, right? So curious for folks, what have you seen that is working? We've talked about a lot of things that aren't working. We've talked about what we're seeing that's maybe falling short. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what you've seen at your own workplace. Maybe it's been reflected somewhere else, or things that have felt hopeful or inspirational to you. What have you wanted to try, but maybe haven't yet? And why is that? In your own setting, in your own workplace, or in your own groups that you find yourself in? Or what is your role in your context and identities, right? We talked about intersectional identities that support your action or potentially hinder action from happening. And what are some things you want to commit to? So those are some things to be thinking about. It's a lot. And again, this can be from your own workplace setting. This can be from other like groups that you're a part of, other spaces and community that you are in. But yeah, I'm curious to hear if anyone has any, like, what has been working? What's been a moment of hope or inspiration that you've come across or seen? Feel free to share in the chat, share out loud. We'll take a couple. Or any of the other questions that pop up as well. What have you wanted to try but haven't yet? What's your context, your role that will support your action? And I will say, I'll say too, like, you know, one of the things that we tell our clients that we work with is there's oftentimes expectation for there to be like huge sweeping changes in policy, in procedure, in big pieces of an organization or in big pieces of a culture. And it really can be as simple as like, how do you take time to check in with people? How do you take time to like acknowledge each person that you're with in whatever space you're in? How do you create space for people to be seen and heard? What does feedback look like, right? Like it's in the little moments as much as it is in the large structural pieces as well. Any thoughts from folks before we move in? Because we do want to share some practices, some things that we have seen or we have recommended. Love that. Okay, so we've got Becky's got a book rec. Awesome. White women. What is it? I didn't see the title of it, but everything you already know about your own racism. And how
It's Syra's and Regina's book.
Yeah. Awesome. Caroline says, I'm committed to elevating marginalized voices. Alice says, I've been a part of a couple book clubs and really initiated some great discussions. That's awesome. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, so much can be so much. Yeah, when you can surround yourself with folks that you can have like true, authentic relationship and conversation with, right? How much power can come from that you then carry out into other spaces. Absolutely, Trish. Have hired more Latinx employees. Have an affinity group. Yeah, a lot of folks starting affinity spaces, ERGs. Getting the feeling some of them are tired after some recent microaggressions during recent all staff meetings. Absolutely, yeah. Worried about retention of these more diverse coworkers. Yeah, one of the things that's interesting is that a lot can be discovered in affinity spaces, and we always encourage folks to like, don't just provide the space to like provide it, but how do we like learn from those spaces? How do we take the wisdom of people, of the people that you have employed, the people that you have trusted to bring on to do the work that you're doing? Like, how do you listen to the wisdom of the people in your space? Rory, go ahead.
Thanks, Nikki. I was thinking about like the main two questions was what's working and the role context identities question. I think like for what's working, I definitely noticed like calling out / calling in small little moments, especially like with my like higher administration. I'm a department lead at CU Boulder, but I'm also an undergraduate student. We're the only department on campus that's 100% student run, which means that a lot of like our employees, including myself, are like continuously distrusted, and like not really allowed to like do the jobs that they've been hired for. And also a lot of our student workers are people of color or low income, and that is not reflected in the higher administration in my building. So like taking my role as kind of like the like face of the department and like as a white person and being able to address it with other white people, like, hey, like what you're doing is feeding into white supremacy culture, or this thing you said, it's not okay. And like trying to address like impact over intention, because it's like that's a lot of the response is like, oh well, I didn't mean it that way. And like that really doesn't matter, because that's how it was received. So I think that's been like working a little bit to kind of like bring these things up and like kind of like push back a little bit of like, this isn't something that's been being noticed, so I'm gonna like just mention it and then, you know, call in a conversation, maybe right now, maybe down the line. And then like in the role context identities, touched on a little bit of like my privilege as a white person being able to address with other white people, where I don't think like that conversation would be the same between like one of my employees who is a person of color addressing like the same thing with an admin person, both because they're in a disadvantaged role as like a quote unquote SA1, which is like our like entry level, like very primary position for students. And I'm like, whatever, like 3 steps above them, which like feels kind of silly, weird to me, because I very much like view us as equals. And, but like the admin, like they see that difference very clearly of like, you know, Rory's the SA4, whatever. So we're going to listen to them. And then like also in role context identities, like myself and another person are the only non-men on our leadership team. So it's like the 2 of us out of 6, or between like 6 and 8, depending on the time of year. And she was just recently hired, and she told me, she was like, I don't think I would have joined the team if you weren't on it. She was like, I was already worried about, you know, how I was like coming into this role, seeing that like every single person on the leadership team was a man, and like being able to see you in that role was like comforting, because I knew that I would have somebody else who understood my side of it. So I do like think that's important too. It's like you can increase diversity when you have diversity, like when you're able to like kind of show like there are people here who understand your experience and support you.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking about as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rory. I think that's a really great example of like, yeah, what are you willing to risk, right? And how do you position yourself to be visible? Yeah, to be visible for folks in like who aren't in as much positions of power as you, or yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I do want to make sure we get to our practices, and we're going to share these slides out with everyone, so you'll get a chance to see and read more in depth. But you know, some of the things that we have noticed in both in the ways that we have maybe made these recommendations and have seen them be a challenge for leaders to figure out how to embody and how to enact, but also in ways that we have seen them be successful, right? That we have seen when you create an environment for DEI and you add check-ins and checkouts and group norms and use communication skills, that actually does move the needle on organizational culture, being more inclusive, creating more belonging, holding more space for folks. So that is one. One other that I well, all of these I think are important, but I would say too, another piece that's really critical as an action step is setting goals, right? Like I think there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of talking about things, and there are strategic plans that are created with a component of DEI. But more than that, I think there is the need to write down what are the outcomes, what are we needing to achieve, what are our beliefs, where are we going to stand our ground, right? Like we were talking about earlier with these corporations that are like, maybe, but then not really when it gets hard, right? Like where are you going to put your stake down and say this is where we stand? Is just like a basic step towards action. Yeah, and then one of the, having a learning cycle, right? When we talk about avoiding perfectionism, it's because folks are afraid of doing it wrong, or folks are afraid of like, well, what if this isn't going to work, or what if we fail? Expect to have missteps and to learn from those. And so our cycle, we name it, commit to something, apply it, implement it, pause, reflect after a certain amount of time, see what worked, see what didn't, figure out what you need to keep, what you need to change, and then try again. And continuing that cycle is super important. And in that, figuring out keeping sustainability in mind, right? How do you keep moving? Maren, what else would you add in these last couple minutes? I know we're at time, but
We are, yeah. And if folks have a hard drop, totally okay. If you could give us something in the chat before you leave, a little exit slip, what you're learning, what you're taking away, a commitment, that'd be awesome. But yeah, what we've said that when you are sharing, Nikki, it also gets me back to that slow to go fast, that there are, and it's, as we've said, it's the stance of what are the things you literally could do today, tomorrow, this week, and then what are the things you need to plan for in 5 years. That there needs to be this massaging and this playing around with, that we're headed here, but to get over there means we're going to have to do all of these things, and up and around and backwards and forwards, and we have to keep reminding ourselves and also our clients that like a lot of this will go a lot slower. We're trying to get humans to move a boat together, like we're trying to move and create culture, and that can be really hard depending on the amount of staff, the amount of buy-in that you have, and just to permission for it all, normalization for it all too. Yeah, if folks have any other questions or anything, happy to have them put in the chat too, but you'll get our information and ways to reach out to us if you are interested. Yeah, any questions or comments, takeaways? We'd love to see them in the chat before we leave. What's a takeaway, a thing that you might commit to, or something that's just percolating right now?
As people add something in the chat, I have a question that I would love for you two to answer. We always have a last question for our speakers. So kind of looking into your crystal ball, what do you see ahead that lies within the field of sustainability in relation to this conversation? So what does the future of sustainability look like?
I have so much hope. And also there's as we were kind of trying to pull in today that, you know, and so much has happened in a three-year span, right? That we're trying to grapple with, we're trying to catch up with, we're trying to figure out what is the shift or the change. Like the wind has changed. And now folks have some experience, have some training, have had, you know, know some more things than maybe they did 3 years ago. But now what is, you know, and that now what, I think that will never change, that we are continuously giving people permission to find what works for them in their context, in their role. And the sustainability piece is that ebb and flow, is that permission to use the folks that you've got, listen to the folks that you've got, try something out, and keep trying to move in the little bit of increments that you can. That this is lifelong work, and it's never going to go away unless you decide to turn away from it. And so that sustainability is it. How do we keep doing this, and what is it going to keep looking like? And that will keep changing. And how do we keep talking about it, reflecting on that? Nikki, what would you add?
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, I think it's going to look different from our different contexts. And I think, that's why we talk about authentic, sustainable action, because it has to be what's right for you. It has to be what's accessible to you. And I think the way that we each can show up more aware, more present, more authentic, more connected, we're out here in the world doing our thing. And you don't have to be a DEI consultant or a DEI facilitator or like specifically in DEI. You can be you in any context and continue to speak up and speak out and to make those values known while you continue to do your own work. I think it's like drop by drop, the river rises kind of thing. It just takes those little moments and little interactions and little moments of growth that are big. They're all big.
I love both of those answers. Thank you. We'll leave the room open a little bit if people want to continue to make comments or ask any questions following. But I know we are over time, so I'm going to just wrap up. I honestly wish we had like 3 more hours for this conversation, because I think we could sit here and talk for 3 more hours. But just want to really say thank you both to you, Maren, and to Nikki for joining us today, for being a part of this conversation. I'm so thrilled to have your voices and to help lead us down this road on continuing the work that we need to around diversity, equity, inclusion. So everybody, please help me give them a very large thank you, a round of applause. Thank you for being here and sharing your hearts with us. Thank you to everybody for joining us, for being a part of the conversation, for your contributions to the conversation. We greatly appreciate that for you as well. Maren and Nikki, we will be planting trees in both of your names through our partnership with One Tree Planted. So you will receive a certificate with where your trees will be planted, and you can learn more about those trees as well. So thank you again for being here today in this conversation with us. We appreciate it. womeninsustainability.org. We'll be taking a little bit of a break for the summer. I'll be posting more events soon, but we will be hosting a lot of events this fall. We hope that you will continue to engage in these conversations with us. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you being here.